At 2:17 a.m., the 911 operator heard something she would later describe as silence that screamed. A woman whispering her address as if someone were standing just inches away, a sudden sharp intake of breath, and then a voice in the background, calm and unfamiliar, asking, "Who are you talking to?" before the line went dead. And to this day, that short call remains one of the most disturbing pieces of audio ever logged. A true crime moment that still haunts investigators and defines the kind of dark case files that refuse to let the past stay buried. This story begins in the quiet town of Briarwood, a place where streetlights hum louder than traffic and neighbors know each other by routine more than conversation. A town that believes serious crime belonged to other places until the night Claire Holloway made a call that would change everything. Because Claire was not famous, not wealthy, not notorious, she was a 29-year-old veterinary assistant newly engaged, known for her soft voice, her methodical nature, and her habit of calling her sister every night before bed to complain about minor inconveniences like long shifts and squeaky doors. She lived alone in a small rented house at the end of Hawthorne Lane, a dead-end street surrounded by trees that seemed comforting by day and isolating by night. And in the weeks leading up to the incident, friends noticed nothing unusual except that Claire had mentioned once or twice that she felt watched. Not stalked exactly, just the sensation of being observed, a feeling many dismissed as anxiety or imagination. On the evening of October 14, 2018, Claire finished work late, stopped at a convenience store, exchanged polite small talk with the clerk, and drove home, unaware that within hours her voice would be replayed in police training rooms as an example of how seconds can mean the difference between life and death. According to phone records, at 2:16 a.m., Claire dialed 911 from her kitchen, and what followed was a call lasting just 46 seconds, a fragment of terror preserved forever, because at first she spoke normally, reporting a possible intruder, saying she heard footsteps inside her house. Then her tone shifted, dropped to a whisper as she gave her address twice, corrected herself, once apologized, and then went silent. And the operator, trained to handle chaos, began asking questions that went unanswered until that other voice appeared. A man's voice, low, controlled, not angry, not rushed, asking who she was talking to. And then the sound of movement, maybe a phone hitting the floor, maybe a hand covering the speaker, and then nothing. When officers arrived 6 minutes later, they found the front door unlocked, no signs of forced entry, lights on in the kitchen. Claire's phone cracked on the tile floor, and Claire herself lying in the hallway, injured but alive, having survived an assault that she would later describe in fragmented sentences before slipping into surgery. The initial narrative seemed simple: an interrupted burglary, an unknown attacker fleeing after realizing police were on the way. But true crime cases rarely stay simple, and this one unraveled almost immediately. Claire told detectives that she never saw the intruder's face, only a silhouette, but she remembered his voice. The same voice captured on the 911 recording, calm, almost curious. And she remembered something else that chilled investigators: that he seemed to know the layout of her house, moving without hesitation through the dark. Police canvassed the neighborhood, collected fingerprints, analyzed shoe impressions, and released a vague description. But no arrests were made, and as days turned into weeks, the case began to cool. Except for one detail that refused to settle: the 911 call itself. Audio experts enhanced the recording, isolating background noise, amplifying the unknown voice, slowing it down, speeding it up, searching for clues hidden between breaths. And what they found raised more questions than answers, because beneath the obvious dialogue there appeared to be a faint sound, like another device, maybe a radio, maybe a phone, suggesting the intruder might have been communicating with someone else, a theory that transformed the case from a lone attacker to something more organized. Investigators then turned inward, examining Claire's life with microscopic intensity: her relationships, her routines, her digital footprint, her work environment. And that is when suspicion began to shift from strangers to familiarity. Claire had ended a relationship 6 months earlier with a coworker named Mark Ellison, a man described by colleagues as helpful, quiet, and persistently attentive, someone who did not handle rejection well, someone who continued to check in long after the breakup, framed as concern, but bordering on surveillance. When police interviewed Mark, he cooperated fully, provided an alibi, even expressed relief that Claire had survived. But something about his demeanor stood out to one detective: the way he listened to the recording of the 911 call without visible reaction. The way his eyes narrowed slightly at the sound of the unknown voice, as if recognizing it. Despite this intuition, there was no physical evidence tying him to the scene. No DNA match, no eyewitnesses, and the case stalled again. Months later, an unexpected development reignited the investigation, when a retired dispatcher came forward after hearing about the case online, claiming the voice on the call reminded her of a similar incident years earlier in another state, a haunting echo that pulled detectives into a wider pattern. That older case involved a home invasion, a whispered 911 call, and a suspect who was never caught. But when audio from both calls was compared, experts agreed there were similarities too close to ignore, and suddenly the possibility of a serial offender emerged. Task forces were formed, databases cross-referenced, and Briarwood's quiet streets felt darker than ever as residents realized Claire's attacker might not have been an isolated threat. The investigation reached a turning point when forensic analysis of Claire's phone revealed deleted files, specifically fragments of audio recorded days before the attack, capturing ambient sounds from inside her home, including the same calm male voice heard on the 911 call, suggesting that someone had been inside before, testing, preparing, rehearsing, and that realization shattered the remaining sense of randomness. Eventually, pressure mounted on law enforcement, and mistakes made early on were scrutinized publicly, evidence mishandled, leads overlooked, decisions questioned, turning the case into a symbol of how even one haunting phone call can expose systemic failure. Years have passed since that night. Claire, relocated, attempted to rebuild her life while the case remains. Officially open, discussed endlessly in true crime forums, dissected on podcasts, cited in dark case files as an example of unresolved terror because the man behind that voice has never been identified, never charged, never silenced. Today, the 911 call is still used in training. A reminder that calm can be more frightening than chaos, that answers do not always come with resolution, and that some voices linger long after the line goes dead, leaving investigators and listeners alike asking the same question in the dark. Who was he, and how close is he now? And as this fades into static, remember that every call has a story, every silence a secret, and this is one that refuses to rest. So tell us what you believe. Do you think the attacker was someone Claire knew, or a predator still hiding in plain sight? Share your theory below. And for more true crime stories that live in the shadows, that live in the shadows, subscribe to Dark Case Files and never miss what others want you to forget.